The use of indigenous references in sports. Throughout the course of all sports, there have been teams with references to indigenous tribes. Some of the most common ones in recent times are the Washington Redskins, the Chicago Blackhawks, the Atlanta Braves, and the Cleveland Indians. The references made by sports teams can be in their names, logos, mascots, emblems, chants, or traditions. Luckily, in recent years, teams with such references have been modifying their teams to get rid of these offensive references. The sports world seems to be divided on this issue, though. Some strongly believe that references to indigenous tribes should be removed, while others are adamant on conserving the names, logos, mascots that are already in place. Debates have sparked across the world on what teams with indigenous references should do. Let's go over some examples of teams with an indigenous reference. First up are the Washington Commanders. They were formerly known as the Washington Redskins from 1933 up until 2020. However, due to the controversial references their name and logo had, they became the Washington Football Team in 2020. As you can see, their logo was literally just a Native American, so this along with the name Redskins was quite offensive. Only recently, in early 2022, did they announce their new official and referenceless name as the Washington Commanders. Another team that's gotten rid of their offensive indigenous reference are the ex-Cleveland Indians. Their mascot was named Chief Wahoo, who was a Native American, and Cleveland's logo had a caricature of Chief Wahoo. This is probably one of the most offensive logos to date. The logo itself was removed in 2018, along with the Chief Wahoo mascot. In 2021, Cleveland banned their fans from using face paints and headdresses at games, since both of these were offensive to indigenous tribes and essentially mocked their traditions. Then, in 2022, Cleveland officially changed their name to the Cleveland Guardians to officially become reference lists to native tribes. The Atlanta Braves are another team that have received backlash for their controversial name, logo, and traditions. Their name is a word that was used to refer to Native American warriors, and although many tribes and activists have spoken out about the offensive nature of this name, the team has not gotten rid of it yet. Also, the Atlanta fans have a tradition known as the tomahawk chop, which is a gesture that indigenous tribes commonly do. The team has created the incentive to stop this tradition by no longer playing the song associated with the gesture, but the fans still continue to do it. Something the team did discontinue is their Screaming Indian caricature that was used as a logo on hats. This was disgustingly racist and received a lot of backlash and criticism. The team fortunately swiftly discontinued this logo and hat. All indigenous references in sports teams should be banned because of how offensive they are. The article, Is It Offensive for Sports Teams and Their Fans to Use Native American Names, Imagery, and Gestures by Jeremy Engel discusses the traditions that the Kansas City Chiefs have that are indigenous references. One of their common traditions is to imitate a tomahawk chop, which is a common gesture in some indigenous tribes, just like the Atlanta Braves fans do. This is essentially a mockery of the tribe, so Engel explains how there's no way that the use of native tradition is honoring. That's an illusion. When fans perform a tradition like the ones that the Chiefs fans do, they falsely believe that they are honoring indigenous tribes by doing so. However, it is actually offensive to these tribes. Not only are the use of indigenous traditions a mockery of indigenous tribes, but so is the use of indigenous names and mascots in sports teams. These are also seen as honoring tribes, but in reality, it is all offensive. There are a handful of well-known professional sports teams with indigenous references, but there are many more schools and minor league teams that have these references. Fraser LeVay, in Offensiveness of Native American Names, Mascots, and Logos in Sports, a survey of tribal leaders and the general population, asks those of indigenous descent how they feel about references towards them in sports. Turns out that most natives take offense to these references. Luckily, though, in the U.S. between 1969 and 2002, more than 600 elementary, middle, and high schools and minor league professional clubs dropped nicknames deemed offensive by American Indian groups. These schools and minor league teams all realized that their team names were offensive, so they switched them. People in native tribes have spoken up and explained that they get offended by these references, which is what led the aforementioned teams to change their names. This is a step that is necessary for professional sports teams as well. Teams in the highest tiers of sports have the greatest influence compared to schools and minor leagues. Therefore, they have a greater impact and influence on the country, so it is of utmost importance that they change their offensive references. Society has reached a point where all racism and offensiveness towards a group needs to be eradicated. These two things have caused so much conflict in the past already, and it is time for us to grow past this hatred against other people. When people think of a group that suffers from lots of racism, indigenous groups are often left out of the picture, even though they receive some of the most hate. This needs to end, and a great way to work towards the end of this racism is for influential sports teams to set an example by getting rid of their offensive references.